so I'm going to start. Perfect. The Transatlantic University Collaboration on Climate Change and Energy Law is a network project, and it's supported in part by a grant from the EU Commission under the Erasmus Plus program. It was developed to establish a series of course offerings each of the spring of 2019, 2020, and 2021 at the Universities of Copenhagen, Denver, and Oslo. Its primary objective was to provide a broader understanding on how the EU and the US are approaching climate change and energy law transition. The presentation will focus on the outcomes of the first and second year and the third year project to maximize the results in the final year, which we're coming into this year, this month actually. First, I'd like to provide an overview of the program, then introduce Professors Catherine Benet, Bea Martinez Romera, and Don Smith, who will cover the history, outcomes, highlights, lessons learned, and the way forward, respectively. So the activities associated with this effort included several components. One is every fall, an annual fall curriculum and class schedule planning meetings between the professors and myself to ensure that the respective institutional standards, deadlines, exams, evaluations are met through the course of the semester, the spring semester. Note that the classes in the US meet in the early morning to accommodate an evening class time in Europe, between which there's about 8-hour time difference. There are in total about 8 to 9 live video conferencing classroom sessions, and they're planned over the course of the spring semester, where each of the 3 project professors delivers 3 lectures to class participants situated in Copenhagen, Denver, and Oslo, respectively. And questions are fielded live. Students' preparation and presentation of policy papers is a second point, where students in the 3 locations work in teams across member states, cultures, and time zones to prepare their policy papers for in-group presentations at each annual conference at the rotating university host location. Energy and renewable energy focus field trips are organized by the project manager and the rotating host university. So the first year we met in Copenhagen, the second year we were meant to meet in Denver, and this year we're hoping to meet in Oslo. We also had to set up a course management system in the form of a customized, dedicated project website that provided the students and professors with a user-friendly structure for staying organized. Here, live faculty and staff bios, or here live, pardon me, faculty and staff bios, project description. Behind a password protected tab are the course materials, including the class syllabus, video conferencing, recordings, mandatory and supplemental readings, PowerPoint presentations, on, and so that the students can then get to class materials really easily from all 3 locations. The project studies 3 unique experiences relating to climate change and the energy transitions that are needed. Colorado, historically an important fossil fuel energy producing state. Today, Colorado is quickly transitioning its electricity generation systems from coal to renewables. In Denmark, since the energy crisis of the 1970s, Denmark has pioneered the promotion of renewables, particularly wind power and generation from biomass and waste. In Norway, the country has a unique energy profile in that it's a major producer and exporter of oil and gas, produced on the Norwegian continental shelf, the NCS. And on the other hand, nearly all of its electricity generation is based on renewable energy sources, and predominantly hydropower, almost 96%. It should be noted that Norway is not a member of the EU. However, it is associated with the Union through its membership of the European Economic Area. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the professors in order of their appearance of the Transatlantic University Collaboration on Climate Change and Energy Law, also known as the acronym as TUCCCEL. So Don Smith is an associate professor of the practice of law at the University of Denver, at Sturm College of Law, where he's taught since 2007. He was a guest professor at the University of Qingdao, China School of Law for 2 years. From 2008 to 2015, he was the director of the Environmental and Natural Resources Law and Policy Program at the Sturm College of Law. He served as editor of the Journal of Energy and Natural Resources Law, published by the International Bar Association since 2012. He has a US Juris Doctorate degree and a master's in European Union law. Next is Catherine Benet. She's an associate professor at the Scandinavian Institute of Maritime Law, Department of Energy and Resources Law, the University of Oslo in Norway. And for those who are particularly interested in partnering with the University of Oslo, she is the Vice Dean for International Relations at the Faculty of Law. Her academic interests and teaching include energy law, petroleum law, environmental law, EU and EEA law, competition law, renewable energy, climate change. Associate Professor Benet is currently researching renewable energy support schemes and alternative financing models, energy marketing design, energy infrastructures regulation, technology innovation, climate change mitigation, measures including carbon capture and storage. She has a background from private law practice in Norway and France, the European Commission. She worked in DG Environment in Belgium, US diplomatic mission and academia. Benet is one of the 4 academic directors of the LLM, a program North Sea Energy Law Partnership, and she's a member of the academic advisory group of the section on energy, environment, and infrastructure law of the International Bar Association, and a member of the Committee on Energy and Environmental Law of Norwegian Center for Continuing Legal Education. She is also an academic research fellow at the Center on Regulation in Europe. You know, it's amazing that these professors have time to do this on top of everything else. And last but certainly not least is Beatriz Martinez Romero. She's an associate professor of environmental and climate change law for the Center of International Law Conflict and Crisis at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law. Dr. Martinez Romero has a keen interest in the international climate negotiations and the regulatory processes at the International Civil Aviation Organization and the International Maritime Organization, as well as developments at the EU level. Her research includes environmental and climate change law and policy, aviation and maritime transport sectors, lawmaking processes at the international and EU levels, environmental taxation, carbon pricing, and related fiscal measures, renewable energy, fragmentation of international law, regime interaction, environmental and climate-related regulation of the Arctic, ocean governance, and corporate environmental responsibility. Now, I've just listed a lot of things, and I wanted to make sure to get all these things out there so that in case there are some overlap with professors on this call, that there would be a point made by that. I'd also like to finish up by saying that Bea has been teaching climate change law for 10 years and is the founder of TRAMARIAN, which is the Transatlantic Maritime Emissions Research Network with NYU School of Law, and ArcInGov, which is an acronym for Arctic Environmental and Climate Change Governance Network with the Canadian Research Institutions. So now, Dawn, may I turn the podium over to you to bring us up to speed on the history of this project and a few associated outcomes. We're going to mute ourselves and go off camera, and we give the floor to you, Dawn.
Can you see my?
Yes, yeah, you might want to turn it to a slideshow. There you go, perfect.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here today with all of you, and particularly with my 3 partners, 3 amazing women who I've had the pleasure of working with for just over 2 years now. I'm going to talk about the beginning of this project, how we sort of conceptualized it and how it came to be. But to begin with, I think it's important to understand the relationship between the European Union and the United States, most particularly the largest bilateral trade and investment relationship in the world. The transatlantic relationship has always been important, and during the course, We showed students exactly why it is important. The idea for the course sort of goes back many years. In 2012, I was named editor of the Journal of Energy and Natural Resources, which Felicia mentioned. It's published by the International Bar Association. And Anita Rohn, our colleague, our former colleague, was a member of the editorial advisory board, as is Catherine Benet. In the early days, from 2014 to 17, Anita Rohn and I used Skype and what I call fingers crossed, because she and I shared lectures back and forth between two of our classes, but we would do maybe 1 or 2 lectures a semester, no more than that, and it was all very rudimentary. The turning point came, interestingly enough, in November of 2017, when Anita was invited by the University of Denver to speak about decarbonization in a post-Paris world. Anita was there, I spoke as well. And at that meeting, Anita and Felicia and I had a meeting sort of on the side, and Felicia approached us with a very interesting idea that neither Anita nor I had ever thought about. So Felicia, maybe you could jump on for a minute and just talk about the meeting that we had probably on that day, November 17th, 2017.
Right. Well, thanks, Don. You know, it was obvious to me what you and Anita had begun was prime for a more formal project, meaning that you were exchanging information transatlantically, actually speaking in each other's classes. And that stimulated a thought to me, well, why not make this more formal, and why not create a curriculum that would actually provide a better structure for that communication, for that exchange. And based on the Erasmus Plus grant proposal or call for proposals, this was prime, I thought, for a network grant. And once I talked to you about that and we started looking at that more closely, it seemed more and more obvious that could be a really nice tool for this project and to support what you and Anita had already begun. So it was because that you accepted that possibility that we moved forward.
Yeah, that was instrumental in getting to where we are today, because to a large degree, Felicia was the one who encouraged us to be more ambitious. Now, this timeline shows what we went through from the conception of the idea in November of 17 to the first class on February 1st, 2019. We submitted the proposal for the grant in February of 2018, and subsequently in July of 2018, we were awarded the grant. And in the autumn of 2018, there was a meeting in November in Copenhagen involving Anita Rohn, Catherine Benet, and me. And we talked about syllabus preparation, website development, and those sorts of things. Unfortunately, and unbeknownst to any of us, when we met in November of 2018, Anita was ill, was sick. And we didn't know it at the time, but she was within the last few weeks of her life. In early December of 2018, we were advised, I was called and told that Anita had died. And of course, this was a shock to Catherine, me, and Felicia. Sadness, sorrow, but there was also a feeling that to honor Anita, we should commit to carrying out the course, which was at that point going to begin in about 7 weeks. At that point, Bea Martinez-Romero, Dr. Martinez-Romero, stepped forward. I don't know that she fully knew what she was getting into. But she and Catherine and I worked through the end of December and the beginning of January to bring Bea up to date as much as we could. And she jumped right in on February 1st and carried out with, in an excellent way, what was going to happen in Copenhagen. So I mention this because we've had ups and downs in this course, not in the context of whether any of us believed in it, but life is unpredictable. There are things that we cannot anticipate. And I think that the four of us have worked through those things, always thinking about the past and how we got to here, but also thinking about the future as well. This is an example of the first screen that I always use when I am giving my lectures to the class. I have the logos of the Faculty of Law at Oslo, University of Denver, Copenhagen is on the far left, the University of Denver, the University of Oslo, CEUC at the University of Colorado, and finally the European Union and the Commission. Some outcomes briefly. These are things that we learned. Melding three different administrative schedules can be challenging. Our semesters begin at different times, they end at different times. There are different things that happen during the semester. In Europe, there is more of a break for Easter. In the United States, we have spring break. So we worked through those and put together a schedule that worked for all the institutions. Developing the reading list was fascinating because each one of us, Catherine, Bea, and I, wanted to cover different things in our lectures, and we would pick readings to highlight and supplement what we were covering. I call individual syllabi. What I mean is for internal purposes at each law school. At the University of Denver, for example, I explained to students how their performance was going to be assessed, and the dates that I wanted various written assignments from them. And of course, I made clear to them that I would be the one judging their performance. We prepared student presentation exercises the first and second years, and we'll do that the third. And these are open-ended questions that student groups select. They can choose, and then they write a paper and give a presentation on that topic. And for example, the first year we had a question saying, you represent an investor who wants to invest 500 million euros in a solar operation to generate electricity and to sell it into the retail market. Where should you invest that money? Ultimately, it came down to Spain and Nevada, and the students assessed EU law, Spanish law. They looked at United States law and Nevada law and decided ultimately to recommend to the investor that she put it in Nevada. We also, the four of us, have also tried to model professional and cultural respect for each other. We live in a time where lots of things are said, and social media is not always a good way for people to learn about how they should conduct themselves personally or professionally. And we've encouraged the students to accept the idea that there is no perfect way, there is no perfect culture. And I think that has been very good for the students because they see the four of us working together, four people with different backgrounds, educated in different times and different places. And I think that's something that they can learn from. And we have showed them how a group can use video conferencing as the foundation for a course and ultimately for the development of projects. Now, in terms of teaching and learning, Bea, Catherine, and I have slightly different teaching approaches that are just reflections of who we are, our own personalities. And I think that the students have learned from that. And of course, the American students have been particularly thrilled that they can see and learn from two really expert and highly regarded professors in Europe. Most of the learning initially was through the course lectures, these 9 lectures, webinars that Felicia mentioned. But the way we set up the course was that as the course proceeded, then a great deal of the learning gets transferred on purpose to the students in the form of preparing papers and presentations on the topics that they have chosen. The student reactions have been excellent. I've been told it's the most useful experience ever in university education. It will help me prepare for a future where I will be working with people from all over the world. And for those of you in the United States and outside, sometimes the teaching of law in the United States, one could come to the conclusion that despite the fact that the United States only has 5% of the world's population, that there is no law outside the United States. And I find that quite a bit of concern in the context of law, because the European Union itself is enormously important, and in the last few years has provided leadership on many issues, not the least of which is climate change. And I also think for the European students, it was useful for them to understand a bit more about our federal system in the United States. And in that context, the federal government in Washington, D.C., and state governments in state capitals like Denver and Colorado share the ability, share authority to be able to work in terms of climate change and the energy transition. And I think that was something the European students really enjoyed. Now, finally, I was told the cultural experience was positive beyond my imagination. Now, we may think that Europeans and North Americans deal with each other every day, but that's simply not the case. And we provided a foundation and a way for students to sort of build a bridge and learn from that. Now I would like to just spend a moment and talk about one of the great outcomes, which was the field trip we took to Copenhagen in April of 2019, because this was very much the penultimate experience in the course for the students. This is a picture of students giving a presentation in a beautiful room in the old law school at Copenhagen University. You see the students in front of the dais or behind it, and then the PowerPoint comparing the legal frameworks of the EU and the United States. Picture of the students. This was a student presentation on April 25th, 2019. And I think it's worth noting that on this panel, the fellow on the far left is an American. The woman next to him is from Australia. The guy next to her from Singapore. The woman with the glasses and the white top, the United States. The woman in black and glasses from Pakistan. The woman in the long hair, brown long hair from Copenhagen, and the woman on the far right from Oslo. This was truly a multicultural group who put their presentation together. Now, that particular presentation won an award. We told the student groups, and there were 7 groups, that the winning paper would be published in the Journal of Energy and Natural Resources Law. And this was the article, this was the paper they wrote for the course and then published in the journal. And Bea, Catherine, and I wrote a an article that in the same issue of the journal that talked about how we taught this course. And if anyone would like to have a full text copy of either one, please let me know. One of the highlights in going to Copenhagen was visiting the island of Samso, which is an island well known across the world as being the location of the Samso Energy Institute, which does really amazing work with respect to renewable energy. And these were just some pictures of the day that we went out with the fellow whose name I can't remember. I'm sure that Felicia does, but he's in the picture on the right. And I wanted to share with you just a few words of what he said and the inspiring nature of the work he does. And he mentioned this in the last few minutes when we met with him.
Two different approaches to this also. So I think that could be that's probably my best advice. That's follow your instinct and be ready to learn something new, even if you already are pretty smart. Two different approaches to this.
Sorry. Trying to move on to the next slide. Oh. And so this is my final slide. Building bridges, or in this case, solar arrays, which are above the students, between governments, cultures, legal systems, and most importantly, people. That's what we wanted to achieve. I think that's what we did achieve. I know I stay in touch with a few of these students, have written some recommendations for them. So this just gives you a taste of sort of what the first year was like. And now I will turn it over to Catherine, I think.
That's right. Catherine, you're up next. And just so the audience knows, you are welcome to submit questions to chat, to me, to Felicia Martinez. And it is looking like our forum is remaining small and we won't have hackers. So it would be my honor and pleasure to open it up completely for a discussion at the end. Catherine, you're next, and followed by Bea, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess it's working well, Felicia?
Yes, it's working. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Felicia. And it's such a pleasure to present today what we have been working on for several years now. What I will present you is some highlights of those already 2 years and what we have learned in terms of lessons from the course and for the future and for other collaborations. I would like to address 4 points. First, organizational aspects. 2, the content of the course. 3, what was our pedagogical approach. And 4, the contribution to internationalization that we aim to do and what we can learn from it. First, in terms of organizational aspects, what have been the lessons? The first one was that the center, represented and led by Felicia, played an instrumental role in coordinating the grant and facilitating the project all the time. The second lesson in terms of organization, that we needed a team, and we had a crucial support provided by the local teams. Would it be student officers like my colleague in Oslo, Elizabeth Ryan, and as well that other officers at each university. As well, IT support has been phenomenal. We had lectures late in the evening in Oslo and in Copenhagen, and we got that support would we need anything. So I would like to thank them as well. And not least, GDPR, data protection people, which became an issue when we started discussing just recording the lectures. And this was as well testing many of the issues that came up afterwards in COVID-19 time. So we were front runners as well for that. The third aspect of the organization was that we had a snowball effect, starting by a personal collaboration, as Professor Smith starting to present, a personal and academic collaboration between lecturers. And we built on that to have speeches and guest lectures. We built on that to have a project. And therefore, we have a snowball effect based on that personal and academic collaboration. Concerning the content of the course, I would like to stress how relevant the topics that we address are. And we are updating our courses, of course, and our lectures every semester. And we see that we are following very closely the issues, and students are asking questions regarding negotiations, new proposals, new strategy from the European Commission. And therefore, we follow very closely as well those matters. What was novel as well was the level of integration of the comparative approach all through the course. And that's a link as well to the fact that we integrate the three universities all time during the lectures and every week. The third is the complementarity of the lecturer's competences. As Felicia presented, we have slightly different competences, and that's a strength because each lecturer is actually a leader in his field or her field. Would it be climate law, energy law, international environmental law, EU environmental law, etc., etc. And that's a unique strength as well to be able to combine those competences through video conferencing. It also reflects another objective of teaching is research-based teaching, that we reflect our research in our teaching and keeping it up to date. Finally, it requires a lot of upfront coordination to make it run smoothly in 45 minutes plus 45 minutes with questions, and that we cover the topics that we should cover in that time. So a lot of preparation in advance and debrief. Third, in terms of pedagogical approach, I would like to stress that it was a unique project, but as well the fact that we were facing different forms of teaching at each university, different styles of teaching, and we had very limited time to cover the different, and we still do in the next semester, to cover the different topics. So that requires necessary preparatory readings from the student to get most of the lectures. And in addition, we have this comparative approach, so they have to be familiar with the different legal traditions. But it is also the case in life that you have different styles, different people, and that you need to be prepared to your meeting, to your lectures. So unique, also a bit different teaching experience. The choice was also made to share the time between lecturers each time. And for that, we wanted to involve the students at each location. And that's another approach in pedagogy, is to activate the students as much as possible. And by splitting the time and having an active lecturer in your room, we thought, and we still think, that it is an important part of the activation of the learning experience. An important part of the course, and we observe that it is a very important part of the learning experience, is writing the paper, working on a paper. And in addition, working on a paper together across 3 universities, not knowing each other in advance, learning how to communicate. That is part of internationalization. That's part of human experience through writing a paper, which should be an academic paper. The next approach in terms of pedagogy was the oral presentation, training students on oral presentation skills. And they got as well the opportunity to present between themselves, but as well to an external audience at the conference. So this is double experience. Digitalization we thought it was important, and the past year has confirmed that digitalization is not here to live, and digitalization is part of legal education today, and it will remain in place. We have in Oslo a center looking at their digital learning as well, developing tools for the students and how we can better integrate that. We're starting a bit candid, and actually we were front runners as well using Zoom already. Now everybody has the Zoom software, but at that time only Denver had the software, and we faced some GDPR issues. We had to monitor the different IT tools. That's part of everyday life now, post-COVID-19 world. So that was a very nice experience to be prepared to that, but how to adapt the course and make it even better, knowing the good and bad sides of digitalization. But digitalization does not replace physical meetings. And that's another lesson from that course, that blended learning across different platforms, different supports and contexts is fundamental to ensure a good learning experience. And that is confirmed by empirical research that digital learning combined with more traditional classroom learning is effectively enhancing learning and high quality in education, including legal education. We were also front runners in the way that we have seen that others have been copying our model, and therefore we have a replication effect of our course at other faculties, which was a bit of the purpose to when we published the paper as well. It was to showcase what we have been doing. And you see some more pictures of the students interacting together, presenting to a pretty large audience, but even bigger audience at the conference, interacting during the site visit, in particular beautiful surroundings of Samsø. And finally, what was our contribution to internationalization? Internationalization of legal studies today is a fundamental. It takes different forms, and we took that course as a way of testing different theories about internationalization. Would it be at the level of the law, the content of the course, but as well of the different learning experiences between students with totally different styles of teaching as a starting point. The course as well deals with global and complex legal and policy challenges. And to solve them, you need to understand the international, regional, in case European, North Sea, and national context. And the way that we have comparative analysis is also giving them the tools to understand and potentially solve those challenges. Therefore, we see a value in the comparative analysis. Finally, we have seen a multiplying factor by the fact that the students that are attending the course are not only students at each university, but often are exchange students. There are not 3 nationalities represented. We had up to 15 nationalities during the first round. So that multiplying factor is something which is also fundamental, which at the heart of what is the European Union and the support provided by the Erasmus Plus program. With that, I thank you very much for your attention. And I pass the word to Beatrice.
Thank you, Catherine. Bea, go ahead. You're muted still, Bea.
I'm going to share my screen now.
Beautiful, perfect, thank you.
Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, it's perfect, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, after the presentations of, well, introduction of Felicia and Dawn and Catherine, what I'm gonna talk briefly to you about is how we're gonna face the last year, the third and last year of the program, which is 2021. And as Felicia said, we are starting in few weeks with the teaching. So the question for question for us is how to incorporate this year some of the lessons that we have learned in the last 2 years, some key developments happening in the political arena and in the law, and how to incorporate the potential, well, the actual and potential COVID-19 constraints. I made like some points that basically replicate what it has explained to you already about how the course functions. So number one is the lecture. So we are planning on doing the same live online teaching. And that is every Monday. You have there how the program looks for this year. And these classes will have to be for now purely online, because in the past we have, in each location, we had the 15 students that are that joined the course, so 45 in total. And we will have them in the class and we will, let's say, broadcast from the university. We had to adapt very quickly to pure online teaching from home last year when the COVID crisis started. And now we have learned from that experience. So we have better, as Catherine was explaining as well, better tools. Our universities are much more, at least speaking for Copenhagen, they're much more in terms of IT and the support that they can provide from home as well. So this is how we're going to start the course this year. It is possible that at some point of the semester, we will be allowed back to the university, and then we will switch to having students in class, or as many students in class as the rules allow. It could be 10, it could be on a rotating basis. But we don't see this as a challenge now as much as we saw it probably last year when we have to move to teaching from home. In terms of substance, of course, the program has this year changed a bit because we have the developments with the EU Green Deal. We have the changes on the US administration, probably US re-entering the Paris Agreement, and what that means for the legislation and regulation domestically. And then in Norway also there's been advances with certain case law, and in Denmark the Danish government agreed to a high target and to create a climate law. So that's also under development, and that will be very much included in the program this year. As Don explained, after these weeks and after the seminar, the trip to Oslo is done, each university will grade their students. So I will do the grading and the exams for my students in Copenhagen, and that will be done around May. We use still this year the platform that it was created, which is an excellent platform, and it's really amazing how much support we got from Colorado and from Denver with regards to the platform where the students gather the materials and we put the program and all the videos are shared. So that's we're still using that platform, which by now we have quite a lot of experience with it. The second issue for the course this year is about the student preparation and presentation of papers. The format of this have really not changed much since the beginning of the program, because in 2019 and 2020, students were meeting in Zoom for their own meetings to organize, to write the papers. So that will still be in place in the same way. We will come up with new questions incorporating these new developments that I just mentioned before. And then, of course, this paper that the students prepare and work so hardly for is presented in a students' workshop. And here is where you can see the COVID uncertainty, because this trip to Oslo, this year is Oslo, the country where we will be taking our students. This year, we plan to go to Oslo at the very, very end, ultimo of April. And while it seems that it might be possible, we also have a backup plan, an online alternative that we have prepared, which will be webinar-based for the students' workshop and also for the experts for the real conference. So we're getting ahead this time, and we're kind of ready for both things, for both scenarios. And it's just a matter of waiting how this is developing in the next probably month and a half. And then the paper that when it's presented at the students' workshop is the best paper. We chose the best paper. They get the opportunity to present it to the conference of experts. So that's a more high-profile opportunity for the students. And then the paper that the students will write in 2021, we aim to publish it the same way that we published the last, the best student paper in 2020 and in 2019. And I have put here, because I think Felicia is gonna make the slides available, a link to both articles in case you wanna take a look. So beyond that, what is gonna happen after the program is over this year in 2021, and we are very much discussing whether we should aim for certain continuity of the program or certain elements of the program. So there's a number of things we're thinking about. Could be starting developing a new course, could be together with some of the universities, could be applying for another grant for a different yet related topic. It could be that we partake or participate or collaborate on projects or teaching in the different locations now that we have developed a network. Also, we're thinking about how to create some kind of platform for the students of the program, maybe for the future, and of course, maybe joint publication. So all this is very much work in progress, because we are right now very focused on what is coming on the 8th of February, which is the beginning of the teaching season. And I think that's all I really have to say. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you, Bea.